Hello and welcome to THC Live for another special edition show here at the Lift Expo Vancouver 2018. I'm your host Nikita Graham and I'm joined by guest host Jeremy Szafron. How are you doing?
That's right. We're here. I'm doing really well. I mean, 2018 is a fascinating year in the cannabis space. Even behind us right now, we have Terry Lake. He's a former Minister of Health in British Columbia. He's now part of another company, so it really is progressing. I'm excited about this.
It is. Over the next year, what is going to happen? Well, it's even less than a year now.
I know.
It's going to be fascinating to see how things are changing, moving. All these people here are super excited.
That's right.
The stigma is slowly starting to change as well.
Stigma, education, things are starting to really adapt. And you can tell by some of the guests that we'll be interviewing today, you'll really hear some dynamic information about what to expect in the next 6 months to a year.
And even past then, right? And
Exactly.
all the excitement that's happening with the growth of hemp as well. So there's a lot of really cool things that are getting going here.
I'm pretty pumped about it.
Yeah. So
let's get it started.
Let's do it. THC Live starts now.
Cam Badley, we all know him from Aurora, a big man in the industry. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
I want to talk about how you got involved in the industry. We know some of the background, but 2 years ago, lay it down for me.
I was actually working in the global biotech industry, biotech and pharmaceuticals, and I was approached by a former colleague of mine in 2014 who said, "You got to get into this business." And I said, come on, I do serious things. I work for the CEO of Bayer in Berlin and Pfizer in New York and Amgen in Thousand Oaks, California.
What's this, right?
Yeah, and he said, you know what, this is serious, it's real medicine. I want you to look into it, I want you to read the clinical data that are available from investigator-sponsored trials, and come back and tell me what you think. And the light bulb went on for me immediately, because having worked in every therapeutic category in healthcare, I was well aware that there's a vast unmet medical need with respect to symptom management across a wide range of health conditions. And that's where cannabis comes in. It's not a disease-modifying therapy, but it is helpful in managing the symptoms. So I ended up getting into this business. At the time I worked for Canopy, which is the only company that currently is larger than Aurora, and got a really good training in this business and learned to love it. And then moved over in the spring of 2016 to Aurora, and it's been a hell of a ride since then.
No kidding, huh?
Yeah.
And how the company's adapted. We were talking before about the advocacy space and people actually engaging with those advocates out there, you know, the people that are passionate about the industry and they want to learn more about what cannabis can actually do for them. How do you engage those folks?
So let me emphasize just how much I've learned from the activists and the advocates in this business. Because I came in, I'm a suit, right? I'm a business guy. And one of the things that makes Aurora special is that more so than any other cannabis company, we've created this unique hybrid culture that brings together suits like me with people who come from the cannabis community, who come from the dispensaries here in Vancouver, who've been involved in the cannabis business for a long time, in some cases a suspiciously long time. But that's where the expertise comes from, and that's where the passion comes from. And that has informed everything that we do at Aurora. And I have personally learned from them. So that's been one of the most gratifying elements of the work that I do and of the role that I play with Aurora. I've really enjoyed that.
So we see quality assurance as being something that's crucial and very important in the industry, very important in the community. How do you talk or teach rather a corporate culture within your community at Aurora, talking to everybody so that they want it just as much as you and they're just as passionate?
So quality control is par for the course in the business that I come from, biotech and pharma. It wouldn't necessarily be the case in a brand new industry that you're inventing called the cannabis industry, the legal cannabis industry. At Aurora, it's job one. Just like Ford used to say, quality's job one, but our QA rules the roost. So she sets the rules, and we all obey this incredibly strict culture of regulatory compliance. And you have to do that, because if you don't, you end up with the kinds of problems that we saw not long ago in this sector, with people using nasty things that are not allowed on the plants. And that puts people at risk, and we cannot be having that in this business. So we've established a corporate culture that first of all ensures that hierarchy doesn't matter when it comes to the most important things like quality control. The QA rules the roost, and nobody is going to tell her If anybody tried to tell our penny what to do, you would be learning something new very, very soon. And that doesn't matter what level of the company that you're at. So function is more important than hierarchy. And establishing that culture of strict regulatory compliance as something that's assumed from the very beginning is critical.
So we've seen stigma dramatically increase in not only the last couple of years, but in the last few months substantially. How important is it to work with public awareness campaigns and with the government to educate?
Okay, so education ahead of consumer legalization is critically important, and we saw that based on the Colorado and Washington experience, and we're starting to do that right now. We're starting to do public education on things such as keeping cannabis away from kids. You know, they call me the squarest guy in the cannabis business. I'm a scout leader for 10 years and a soccer coach for 10 years, and I don't want underage youth using cannabis any more than I want them using alcohol or psychoactive prescription drugs. So we're doing a good thing, educating the public about that, and also about the dangers of impaired driving. No matter what the substance. That said, the stigma has changed in Canada very, very distinctly just since I got into this business. When I came into the medical cannabis industry in 2014, I tended not to want to talk publicly about what I did, because there was still quite a bit of stigma attached to it. These days, it's that the parents of my scouts and of my soccer players who sometimes say, hey, I saw you on TV, what's the latest? And they're quite curious. And I think the reason why attitudes have changed so much is because we've had 3.5 years of experience with the medical system, and so we've got 300,000 Canadians have a prescription, and if grandma is using it, if my Uncle Ted is using it, then probably it's not so dangerous. So we've seen rapid social change around that, and it's very gratifying.
So let's talk about and jump forward to, I'd like to jump forward if we can, July. What can we expect? Where are we at? I mean, you guys are working with the government daily, I'm sure. Let's talk about how we're going to wind this thing open, and are we going to make the deadline?
Deadline.
I know.
You know, who knows? The Senate might delay it a little bit, whether it's July, whether it's August. It doesn't really matter. We're doing it. So I don't think anybody should, you know, panic if it's not July 1st. It doesn't really matter. And for some companies more than others, it doesn't really matter. Because for us, we also have different distribution channels internationally. We're already selling our product in Europe.
Of course.
So in big picture, should we worry about a deadline? No. At Aurora, we worried about a deadline? No.
How is Germany these days?
A fantastic market, just growing so fast. We own the largest medical cannabis distributor in the European Union. It's called Botanicals. We acquired them in the spring of 2017 for about $23 million, and it's turned out to be a transformative, incredibly valuable acquisition for us because it's opening up the entire EU. And in Europe, there's tremendous demand, and the excess of demand over supply for legal regulated cannabis is the story globally of 2018. And a part of that story is that companies like Aurora and Canopy, leading Canadian companies that are extremely well capitalized and have made it their business to expand internationally, we're going to be putting our stamp on the world this year. It's really exciting.
We're right at the forefront of it.
Right at it.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it, and best of luck. It's going to be an exciting year.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Nikita.
Well, I am here with Bethany Ray, the co-founder or the founder and the CEO of Flower and Freedom. I'm really excited to hear more about this. It sounds amazing. Can you give us a little idea of what it is?
Yeah, we at Flower and Freedom, we're a lifestyle brand, but we're on a mission to really help the new consumer understand cannabis for wellness and bridge that gap of knowledge that's existed between this understanding of being told all our lives that cannabis is bad for us, and now we're hearing that there's medical cannabis, you know, how does that make sense in my life? So we create different events and a lot of video content to really help break down the information and the knowledge that a new consumer needs to make those decisions for themselves. So.
That's very cool. So we're trying to change the stigma, and you're trying to kind of open it up to kind of some of the women, maybe even the housewives who are looking at this like, oh, cannabis is a dirty thing, and we want to, you know, you're kind of changing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Changing that conversation, and at our different events and experiences and our videos, we explain over 10 different types of consumption of cannabis without smoking, because there are so many different ways. And for me, why I started this was that I was just getting to know cannabis, discovering cannabis. I'm a very active person. I'm out hiking and exercising, and it wasn't really being represented in that way. There wasn't that sort of this new consumer destigmatized representation. So I decided to create Flower and Freedom to show how a healthy life with cannabis looks like. And not just me, we create different types of video and events with Flower and Freedom educators to reach communities across Canada.
That's great. Now, how does a viewer get in touch with you and possibly sign up for an event or join kind of the list?
We have our website, flowerandfreedom.com, so we'll have our events listed there, and we will have a sign up for our experiences that can also be booked as private home sessions, or in your community centre you can host a Flower and Freedom experience. And then also we're really active on Facebook and Instagram, and we have our YouTube channel up and running now. That's at Flower and Freedom. So we would absolutely love to have you join our community and join the conversation. So.
Wonderful. And so this isn't just for females, it's for men as well, right?
Yeah, we have a very female-focused message, but it is for the health and fitness enthusiast who is a man as well. But we really do talk to the liberated baby boomer and that mum who doesn't quite understand how cannabis could fit into her life. So that's, we're really a well-rounded brand and excited about the future of legalization.
That's cool. Well, if they can't fit into life, they can fit into your clothing line as well, which is pretty cool. So you can check that out also.
Yeah, I actually have a background as a fashion designer, and it was really bringing all my passions together when I realized how passionate I was about having this cannabis conversation. So we do have some beautiful merchandise that will be available in some cannabis storefronts and online at flowerandfreedom.com.
Well, it's nice to see a very classy group representing the new ideals of cannabis. Thank you, Bethany, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nikita. I hope that you're having fun down there. Now, Dr. Ian Mitchell is joining us, and he is an ER doctor that has quite an extensive background into research, dealing with opioids. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about this whole establishment of DUI, driving under the influence of possibly cannabis. First of all, give me a background of you and how you got started in the industry.
Well, I'm an emergency doctor up in Kamloops, and that's kind of my main occupation, but I'm involved in the cannabis world as a provider for cannabis for patients. I have a cannabis clinic up there that I run with MCRCI. And I'm also involved in research as far as doing a study that's run out of UBC and sponsored by Tilray on PTSD and cannabis. So that's a bit of kind of the background.
Yeah.
The driving kind of comes in as far as intersection of these two worlds of emergency medicine and cannabis.
Of course.
Our hospital is one of the major trauma hospitals in British Columbia. So we see lots of trauma, and certainly we see lots of trauma associated with alcohol.
Okay.
But now the concern is really coming up with cannabis. You know, what's going to happen once it's made recreationally legal?
Right.
And what's happening just as cannabis use is increasing in our society in general.
Yeah. So you see a lot of trauma where you are associated with in Kamloops. Let's talk a little bit about that whole gray area. There's a lot of talk about cannabis and driving. Is it known? I mean, there's a lot of alcohol, but what's going on there?
So we know that alcohol is out there, and we have a very good idea of what alcohol does to people. The more alcohol you take in your body, the more impaired you are, and it's very simple. And that's why we can rely on breathalyzer tests to say, well, look, if you've got this amount of alcohol, you are too impaired to drive. And we tolerate a lower level of impairment, but we draw the line at 0.05 or 0.08, depending where you are in Canada, and saying, look, that's it. We don't allow impairment beyond that area. The problem with cannabis is it's not so straightforward. We don't have the science to say that a blood level correlates with impairment. In fact, we have very good scientific evidence that it does not correlate with impairment.
Right. Okay, let's get into that scientific evidence of it not correlating, because it's a fascinating one for me. I think I was reading some of the statistics in one of the articles that you published where alcohol can lead to a 200% rate of possible accident, whereas cannabis is a different percentage that's much, much lower. Yeah,
so this is everybody's worried that it's going to be carnage on the roads and it'll be just complete disaster.
Scare tactic?
It is very much a scare tactic. So a recent study out of France looked at the issue of driving with alcohol compared to cannabis.
Okay.
And what they found was that there was a 65% increase in the risk of accident with cannabis. And that sounds pretty bad, but we're talking about really small risks to begin with. You know, when you go out, your risk of being in an accident is 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000. But even though that sounds bad, the comparison with alcohol, the increased risk was 1,600%.
Oh my gosh, so compare.
So your increased risk is 1.6 with cannabis, but 17. So it actually is 25 times worse.
Wow.
as far as impairing than cannabis.
So with the research levels, I mean, we're not quite there. I mean, we just heard about a study from France. Are we moving forward with increased research in this space? Because a lot of people back home, as you said, they are scared of it. It's going to wreak havoc on the roads. Where are we in Canada?
We're actually awaiting the results of a new study coming out that's being carried out through Vancouver General. Dr. Brubaker has done a lot of work in this area.
Okay.
And our hospital has been participating in this research. And what it's about is looking at accidents and if people are culpable. You know, if someone drives a truck into you, that's not your fault. It doesn't matter what substances you're in. Right. But if you go off the road on an empty road, that's probably your fault. So those are the accidents where we're really interested in what role did the substances play there. So that's research that's coming out. But what we can say right now is that overall, even at worst, cannabis rarely gives people a higher level of intoxication than people with a 0.05 blood alcohol level.
Wow, really?
So we're just not talking that same level of impairment.
Right.
You just don't get up to that. Now, I'm not saying that can't happen, and there's people, if you know, maybe they ate 4 brownies, they probably shouldn't be on the road, and that's pretty sensible.
But the typical consumer, the typical recreational consumer or medicinal consumer can pretty much understand that if they smoke a cannabis, for instance, or maybe ingest some of it, they're not going to get to the level of impairment that alcohol is. And that's typically what people are thinking is going to happen.
So that doesn't mean it's okay and off you should go and drive on the road after taking a couple of puffs, but pot consumers are much more able to gauge their impairment. They do tend to drive slower.
Okay.
And they kind of are able to gauge their own impairment, whereas for alcohol it tends to be the reverse, that people don't have judgment about their driving and they tend to drive more erratically.
So we've covered a little bit of the research and where we are in a Canadian market of that. Have you seen any type of product or technology out there that may be able to provide a road test for police officers? I mean, a lot of the police departments out there are launching this anti-campaign, right? We're hearing about it all in the States, especially too. Where are we with that? Are we there?
Well, we're not, and right now they're still looking at breathalyzer technology, and this is going to fail miserably. It's never going to stand up to any court scrutiny, because what we know very clearly is that the level of THC in your blood doesn't correlate with impairment. So you're never going to be able to square that with the courts, and it unfairly penalizes people who might be chronic medical users and will always have a blood level that would preclude them from driving. So really we need to move into tests that don't test for blood levels, but test for impairment. And that's really the critical difference. So that's what the drug recognition experts do when they get out and have people walk the line and touch their nose, that kind of thing.
Sobriety tests.
But that's super expensive and intensive, and there's not that many experts around. So we need to move to that next level with technology, to find an app, to find, there's a university in America that's looking at some kind of helmet device that would read your brain waves and measure impairment. But we need to move beyond blood levels.
So say if you had, and this is a hypothetical one, I'm just going to throw it at you. Say if you had a child out there, or not a child because they would be of age, obviously, maybe, let's hypothetically say somebody over 25 years old, and they were a loved one of yours, would you advise against driving under the influence of of cannabis?
Yeah, I think you have to give that information as the main recommendation. You know, generally for study purposes, we recommend that people don't drive for at least 3 hours after consuming, particularly if they're feeling high. Now, that's the same information I would give to somebody if I was starting them on morphine for a pain condition. But I wouldn't expect that a week or 2 weeks down the line that they would still not drive. If they're still taking morphine, we would expect they'd get used to it, they would be able to gauge the effect, and they would adjust their driving accordingly. And that's what people need to do with cannabis as well. You have to take responsibility, but also appreciate that it's nowhere near as impairing as alcohol. And so that people shouldn't be that concerned that it's going to be a disaster on the streets.
So in terms of driving under the influence of cannabis, where do you think we're going to be in the next, let's say, a year with legalization coming up in July?
So I think we're going to be moving away from breathalyzers. I hope that we'll have passed that point and moving on to better technology. There's an app called Druid, which people can download on their cell phone or their iPhone.
You were talking about that before. It's almost like a field sobriety test in an app.
It's a field sobriety test in an app. Basically, it gets you to do some balancing tests and move the device around. Wow. And based on that, it can't tell you that you're safe to drive, but it can tell you that you're unsafe to drive. And so even that is going to be helpful for people, and that's applicable for alcohol and cannabis.
So the message of the story is alcohol and cannabis while driving is very much different, and we shouldn't do either, but we shouldn't also be that scared of all of this, this rhetoric that we're hearing. Doctor, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
That. I'm here with CCO Alan Lingwood from Farmacy. How's it going?
Nikita, it's going great, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to be here in your booth checking out. It's absolutely beautiful. I've heard that you guys have a dispensary, or soon to be 2 dispensaries in Victoria. Can you tell me a little bit about the way you guys work?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the first licensed dispensary in Victoria, British Columbia. Within the municipality of Victoria, they've regulated locally our industry, which has been great. We've been working wonderfully well with City Council in creating a business model that works well for the community, works well for our customers and patients and members. And working with City Council, we've been approved for our second location downtown on Johnson and Douglas. It'll be a beautiful store. It's an old heritage building we're investing $500,000 into, and it will certainly be the most amazing dispensary in all of Canada for sure.
That's really cool. So you guys are trying to change kind of, I guess, a bit of the stigma around dispensaries as well, and create something where anyone can walk in and feel at home, feel comfortable, not feel, scared, I guess, of the whole situation.
Yeah. Our founders wanted to create an environment where anyone would feel comfortable walking into a mainstream setting where anyone can feel comfortable, even you and your mom, and come and buy medicinal cannabis. Reducing the stigma as much as possible, just creating a space where anyone can come in, learn about cannabis if they've been removed from it for a long time, and also for connoisseurs to come into an establishment that's truly appreciating cannabis as a product and cannabis as a culture, and serving in a way that no one else had really done at the time, and still arguably is not able to mimic.
So one other thing, you guys have a lot of specialized bud tenders, let's call them, people who are very knowledgeable in the market, but dealing with ailments and people that actually have medical issues, and they're on staff there with you guys?
Yeah, they certainly are. Our market definitely skews a little bit older. Our average age of member, we have 23,000 members. The average age is roughly 40. And we have about 4,300 members that are over the age of 65. So these are all people that are dealing with a true medicinal need, and many of them are coming in for that public education. They want to talk to a knowledgeable bud tender. We can't advise or prescribe. We train our staff to just publicly educate people on the range of products we offer and empower the customer to make the decision on their own as to what would be right for them based on past experience and based on new information as it comes available.
And so how does somebody, if they're walking in for the first time, they've had some pains, they've maybe had, issues they've been dealing with for long periods of time, how does somebody get a card so that they can come to your store?
Absolutely. Our membership sign-up process is fairly straightforward, but you absolutely must be 19 years or over. There needs to be a medicinal need because we're still in an environment where medicinal cannabis is what's legal. So we're playing to that. We have a nurse full-time on staff who's doing a sit-down consult face-to-face with members coming in, or online. If someone can't come into the store, we can do it over Skype with our nurse. And she's just really checking to make sure there's no conflict with current medication, and onboarding cannabis into your treatment methodology is going to be okay. And just making sure any questions are initially answered about cannabis and their health, and making sure we get all our paperwork dialed in and into our system, and you can become a member fairly quickly and then start shopping in store or immediately online.
Well, that's great. Thank you for having us, Alan. I'm excited to come over to the island, to Victoria, and to check out your soon-to-be new and beautiful dispensary.
Yeah, wait for us for March, and we'll be launching the new store, doing a big a big splash celebration, and it'll be an amazing event, a celebration for us at Farmacy for sure, a milestone moment, but I think also a milestone moment for the industry. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Alan. Well, hello, Terry. Look who it is. Terry from MCRCI. How's it going?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. You checking out the show?
Well, we have a booth here, so yeah, it's been very busy, twice as busy as we were last year. I'm just heading up to Green Planet to talk to a buddy of mine. Why don't you come up here? I'll introduce you.
I would
This
love
guy
to
is
meet him.
Very wealth of knowledge, knows
Awesome.
everything about the growing side of things. Mark,
Terry.
how you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Great. This is
Good.
Nikita. She's got a few questions for you.
Hi, nice to meet you, Mark. How are you doing?
Well, I'm great. How are you?
Doing well,
Good.
doing
Nice to meet
well. So, all of a sudden, we're here at Green Planet. And
Welcome to Green Planet.
what is Green Planet?
So we are we're multifaceted. We're a wholesaler distributor of anything and everything to support the hydroponic industry. So we sell to garden stores, garden supply stores, hydroponic stores. So we kind of like to think of ourselves as the picks and axes. But we're also a nutrient manufacturer, so we manufacture our own brand of base nutrients, additives, et cetera, et cetera. So we're, like I said, we're multifaceted. So everything you see here are brands that we carry and brands that we promote and we support. So you see a Gorilla Grow Tent, Kind LED lights, Spectrum LED lights, PL lights, Current Culture, Autopot, a variety of brands. And also, and you would look great in these, Method 7 sunglasses, because if you have a grow room or grow in an environment that has lighting, you got to protect those eyes and you might as well look good at the same time.
How do those look?
And you look fantastic.
So now I can go into your hydroponic world here of the growing.
You can go into the hydroponic world now.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
these are pretty
fantastic.
cool. So you guys carry a whole bunch of products, and it's all wholesale. So how they find you online, you have to go to a hydroponic.
If you're looking for us, you find us at mygreenplanet.com, and we sell to hydroponic stores across the country. So yeah, we're easy to find, and like I said, we support the entire industry with the product that we carry. But while
Awesome.
you're here, I would
Yeah.
love to introduce you to somebody that I think is really cool.
Deal.
So I have right here David Robinson. David is the owner
Hi,
of the
David.
Pacific Northwest Garden Supply Store in Nelson, but he's also on the board of directors of the Craft Cannabis Association of British Columbia. And he's somebody that we've partnered with, and we believe in what he's doing, and I think you guys should talk. And he's got
Awesome.
some-
Do you mind chatting for a minute?
I'd love to.
Awesome. So I heard one thing that stuck out was the craft growers. You're from Nelson. It's a huge, there's a lot of arts there, a lot of creativity. I imagine that medical, not even medical, but just cannabis comes along with that.
Absolutely. Cannabis has been part of the financial backbone and cultural backbone of Nelson for probably 30 or 40 years. We were probably the outdoor capital of Canada for many, many years, and now we produce some of the highest quality indoor craft flowers that you will possibly come across in the industry. The community has really embraced myself as a retailer. I opened Pacific Northwest Garden Supply in Nelson in 2003, and I've grown with the community and contributed to stable crop production. I'm also an author of a book I call The Grower's Handbook, or Teachings of the Garden Sage. And we make a lot of videos, and my passion is really teaching people how to grow, inspiring them to grow, and be passionate about gardening. With all the changes in the industry, which I've watched over the last 22 years, it became very important that we shape the future. You know, if we don't speak up and ask for what we want, we can't really be disappointed when we don't get it. So about a year and a half ago, I volunteered my time to become a director on the board of the Craft Cannabis Association of British Columbia. And we've taken the time to submit papers, let the government know what we want, and lately they've responded by putting forth the proposed regulations for micro-producers, microprocessors, and so on. So they're hearing us, they're recognizing the true need to involve the pioneers that built this industry in the emerging illicit market, And of course, also the great wealth that we hold in genetics, like all the strains that we've developed, is also being recognized. And this is absolutely crucial that we facilitate this transition from gray market to white market for all of these people that built this world. And I plan to have a hand of that in Nelson.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to join and come to Nelson maybe one day and check out all the wonderful things you guys have there.
That would be awesome. You're welcome anytime. I'm easy to find. Track me down. I'll show you around.
Awesome. Well, let's keep the craft growing alive, because that is what people like yourself have been fighting over the years. That's what it's all about now, and legalization's finally around the corner. So let's try to keep the people who are the experts at it in the industry, I guess. So
Absolutely.
Thank you guys both for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Nikita, great to meet you.
Awesome. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Nikita. We're joined by Chris Wagner. Now, you have a fascinating story yourself, as well as the company that you're representing. First, let's talk about why you got into cannabis.
Sure, yeah. It's, I've spent 25 years in life sciences, in the pharmaceutical biotechnology end of things. And when I first became aware of what was going on in cannabis, what really interested me was the components of cannabis. When you break it down, there's these cannabinoids, right? And there's over 100 of them. And each of those 100 have been associated with different effects in different human conditions,
Right.
whether it's sleep or anxiety or anti-cancer and so on. And when I saw this list, I thought, this is amazing that for the first time in over 100 years, because it's been illegal,
Right.
for the first time in over 100 years, we're now actually going to be able to study cannabis in a way that it should be studied.
Right.
We basically have this tool set that I've learned that has never been applied to cannabis. So
Right.
it's this tool set of modern science,
Yeah.
modern studies, modern genomics,
Pharmaceutical grade.
pharmaceutical grade, high throughput screening, in silico testing, all these things that we just, all the products we consume go through,
right.
but cannabis never did.
So let's talk about the research in terms of, if licensed producers, for instance, they're going to be able to work with researchers, and then much like we were talking about, Canada is in the unique ability to lead on this sector because it's going to be federally legal. So let's compare the US and Canadian market and tell the audience a little bit as to the importance of the work that needs to be done here.
Yeah, so how often does Canada get to lead the US? Or get to lead anything, quite frankly.
Right.
And so this is a unique opportunity for Canada to lead because it is, as you mentioned, legal.
Right.
So in the US, if you're a researcher and you get your money from a federal government source and you do cannabis research, you're going to lose your federal government funding.
Right.
But in Canada, that's not the case. So we're working with researchers at UBC, researchers at McGill, we're working with researchers in the Czech Republic, we're working with researchers pretty much everywhere except the US, interestingly.
Right.
On really trying to look at how specifically do these different cannabinoids affect different human conditions and studying them in a way that adults want to see the data and information presented, and regulators want to see it, and payers want to see it, and governments want to see it. People really want to know, what does cannabis do, and how should I use it with confidence so I can have a predictable result every time I use it.
Right.
We all know if you have a glass of wine, you know what happens. If you have 2 glasses of wine, you know what happens. 3, you know what happens. But with cannabis right now, you don't really know.
So where are we in terms of evolution within the product based on not only purity, but also professional dosing? Because I think that that's the huge thing here within the science community is we're able to now go ahead and dose it correctly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this is the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
So when I, you mentioned what got me interested in this industry. What got me interested was the potential to do good science and good things for people, accurate dosing and product consistency and quality is low-hanging fruit because it does not exist today.
Right.
So, we grow these plants, and from, one person calls it this certain strain, and another group calls it the same strain. They are totally different.
Absolutely.
And they're different not only between the 2 producers, but they're different every time they're consumed as well. So applying standardization of dosing and delivery makes a lot of sense. And it's one of the first things we're going to do, because if you want to have confidence that when you take this, I'm going to have this result. The dosing needs to be right.
Absolutely.
The product consistency needs to be right.
Right.
And so that's ground level entry. Interestingly, it doesn't exist today,
Right.
but that is exactly where we're headed.
So as we destigmatize the industry and the product itself, we talk to consumers and some advocates where they say, listen, it's too scientific right now. Let's just get back to Mother Nature. Let's just put it in the soil. But really, them together is what the future of the industry is, because it's going to encourage the user to be able to use it for the correct reasons.
Yeah. Science often has a way of alienating people because the words are complex.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's about understanding what you're taking, where it came from, what you're taking, what it is, and what you're taking, what outcome you're going to expect. And you should be able to expect the exact same thing every single time. And so is that natural? I don't know. Is that back to nature? I'm not sure.
Right.
Is it scientific? It's certainly the scientific method. Is it confusing? Might be. Might be.
Yeah.
But that's what we're going to do. We're going to use the scientific method and medical approaches.
Right.
But we are going to try to make it understandable for the people who wish to consume it.
So let's break down stigma within the scientific community and how it's adapted even in the past 2 years.
Yeah. So stigma within the scientific community is an interesting one because theoretically scientists shouldn't care.
Yeah.
This is a chemical or a product, and it shouldn't matter what it is. We should be able to study it.
Right.
But they do care because of the politics that are layered on top of it.
Right.
And so the politics have made it difficult for really good research to go on. And that in turn stigmatizes it. I think we will see a slow lowering of stigma as time goes on.
Right.
I think scientists the stigma will reduce. Within governments, the stigma will reduce. Within society, it will reduce. Because quite frankly, it's not, cannabis is not the stigmatized thing that governments for a long time have wanted us to believe.
Right.
It is truly is this sort of magical, wonderful plant that we need to pull apart and understand, but it is not anything that the devil brought, or it is not something to be afraid of. This is something to embrace and do good things with, and we can do that, and we're going to do that.
So as a licensed producer then, how do you conquer stigma based on public awareness and education? What's the approach there?
Yeah, I think people need to be educated to understand the product. They need to be educated to understand whether it's right for them. And so what we are doing is we're trying to provide research and data so they can feel comfortable with that information, because most of the research and data that's out there today is not very well done.
Right.
Because of the stigma and the other things we've spoken of. It's been very difficult.
Test it.
We can't test it. So it's difficult to do good research. So to do good research and to get people feeling comfortable, we need to do that research and communicate it to people. And that will, and of course there's the marketing and the branding and the softer elements that go along with that, which we will do as well.
Yeah.
But it's really, it all comes from a foundation of this is very reliable, good product that's well studied, and now we can tell you about it. And you should feel comfortable about it because now we understand.
Let's be future tellers for a second. Come July 2018, where do you see the industry going? What excites you the most about it?
So it's, everything excites. It's July, incredible. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's how do you overstate how it's a big social experiment. It's going to be incredible. There will be.
Can we keep up with supply?
I think so. I think the bottleneck now is actually on the retail end of things. I think the licensed producers are, we've got over 1 million square feet of grow capacity and more on hand if it should be required. So we can produce hundreds of thousands of kilos of cannabis, and so can some other licensed producers. There's a couple of big ones like us, and so I don't think undersupply is going to be a problem, but I think that getting it into the hands of consumers who wish,
chain.
yeah. So it depending on the province, there's different. So it'll be bumpy. I don't think the wheels are going to fall off the bus. I don't think we're going to see mass chaos. I think it'll be fun and interesting. There's going to be all kinds of stories.
It's exciting times.
It's exciting. We're going to watch and participate. I love it. I can't predict what's going to happen, except that it's going to be fun and exciting.
Well, we got to get you on past that legalization date. Chris, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, Terry. That was really cool chatting with Green Planet.
Yeah, no, they're very, very knowledgeable in the industry. Now, I got somebody else we should talk to. A friend of mine, Scott, he's with LMG, and they're one of the only insurance companies in the country that specifically work on the cannabis industry.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Hey, excuse me.
Well, this is him here.
Hey, Scott, how you doing, man?
Hi, Scott.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Some questions for you about the insurance industry, but I got to roll, so I'll leave you guys to it and talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm really good. This has been an amazing couple of days here.
So, as I was just told, so you're in the insurance side. So this is a very, very, very small market.
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, there's not a lot of brokers that wanted to take this on because of the stigma, but we've been at it for about 9 years, so we've been probably the brokers that have been doing it longer than anybody, and at present we've got about 1,000 growers insured, as well as we work with 9 of the licensed producers and dispensaries. We insure cannabis events, cannabis cups. Basically, all we do at my agency all day long is cannabis insurance. We've got a team of professionals that know the industry like nobody else in the business, and we're also patients. Some of us are patients as well, and so we've got an intimate knowledge of everything, and our success is kind of rooted in imparting that correctly to the underwriters, and then writing the policies and not having the claims because they're safe. And it's just turned out to be an amazing success for us.
Awesome. So the company name is LMG. What does that stand for?
We're branding it right now for Love My Green, but what it really stood for in the past was Lomas Milne Group. And but all of a sudden I'm in the cannabis space, so Love My Green might work for us.
Very cool. So have you had any past experiences with cannabis to kind of bring you over to the side of insurance for cannabis?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I mentioned some of us are patients, and I am a patient. I had a car accident, and I had a C6, C7 spinal cord fusion operation, and I was on maximum gabapentin and T3s just to sleep, and I stopped cannabis when I was a younger person because it put me to sleep. And now all I needed it for was to actually put me to sleep. And so it's been 7 years I've been a patient. I haven't taken pharmaceuticals for 7 years. I have a large family, and they need me. And so I understand the advocacy side and the patient side as well too. And that has additionally helped me impart it to the underwriters as well. It's just knowledge that you just don't get by answering applications.
Cool. And so if people do want to get insured, so you're working with big corporations, you're working with small growers, pretty much anyone who is licensed, correct?
Correct, yeah. The license is key, obviously, and right now in Canada we have the ACMPR Part 1 and Part 2, which covers commercial and medical growers as well. And recreation is coming, but until it's there, we're just going to focus on this.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for chatting. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you, you too.
Love My Green. I'm going to remember that one in case I need insurance.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm here now with the COO of Lift, Craig Hudson. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. This has been an amazing weekend. We're very happy with it, yeah.
It is. It has been amazing. How do you feel? So this is now the second one that we've had in Vancouver. How do you feel it's been going so far?
This has been going absolutely incredible. We were saying that our expectations for the show were high, as they always are, of course. We have exceeded the expectations. This has been, we're waiting for the numbers, but this has been far larger, and I would say even better than the show that we just had in Toronto, which is just, it's showing the momentum that the entire industry has right now. And you can see it in the booths, you can see it in the attendees, in the exhibitors, like just everyone is so excited and just wonderfully passionate. And it's really coming out in this event, which is great to see.
Well, it was amazing walking in here yesterday for the first time that I've been to a Lift Expo, let's call it. And walking in, I was blown away by the amount of not only people who are here walking around, but the amount of booths that you guys have filled.
Yes, I think we've got just over 200 booths right now. Going forward, it's probably going to be even more. I mean, again, the industry is expanding. What strikes me, so I've been with the company for about 6 months, and in the industry as well for about 6 months, and what really strikes me is the diversity of booths that are here as well. So I mean, you've got obviously your standard cannabis booths, the LPs are here, but then you've got all the other ancillary services that are here. Like, it really does display that this is a very large industry all under one roof right now, which is, again, it's exciting to see.
So the viewers that are watching the show, they know that this is a cannabis show. Can you explain to them in a little more detail what Lift is actually about?
Sure. Lift was formed about 4 years ago, and it identified a gap in the market, which was the LPs were trying to obviously sell their product, but weren't able to really talk to what they were trying to sell just because of the legislation that was in place. The consumers had no clue how to get product, and if they did know where to get the product, they didn't know what product to get or what was good for their particular ailment or whatever it was. So we filled that gap to try to educate both sides and create a bridge, I guess, across that information asymmetry that was happening there. So as a result, Lift has grown into a company that serves to better inform cannabis users. So in everything that we do, so I mean, the expo here is a fantastic example of obviously as a user or an investor or whatever my role is, I'm coming into this, I'm getting educated about the entire cannabis industry. Outside of that, we have a reviews platform on our site, which serves to allow users to explain how they have enjoyed their cannabis strains, what has actually worked for them, what hasn't worked. So then if I'm brand new and I've got whatever the ailment is or whatever the symptom that I'm looking to treat, I can actually find out what is working for others so that I can help myself out. And again, it helps all the LPs as well, because then they can start to talk to the efficacy of their products, which is just, again, a fantastic service. So it's bridging the information gap that exists.
That's interesting. And so one of the big things, though, is stigma. It's still, it's funny when you see clips on the news, they portray one type of user, I guess you could say. When I walked in here, I was amazed. Everyone's in suits. It's very kind of highbrow almost in the marijuana or cannabis world, and it is changing the stigma, and that's something you guys are also really trying to do, is change that around, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, the stats themselves don't actually bear out what that stigma is. And what I found fascinating, this is more of just a personal anecdote, is as I've come into the industry, I am getting a lot of people that are coming to me almost on a one-on-one basis just to say, hey, psst, by the way, I also use, or I've invested in, and it's this dirty little secret that everyone seems to have. So if everyone actually just stopped having the secret and would actually talk about it, the whole stigma would disappear in no time, which is, I find it funny. So I actually don't think it's going to take that long for the stigma itself to disappear, and for people just to realize that this is just another way to relax or enjoy whatever you want to enjoy.
Well, it's kind of funny because people go out to the bar, after a long work day, everyone meets up with their fellow workers, I guess, or whatever, and they all go and sit at the bar and they have a bunch of drinks, and that's totally acceptable to do that.
If I have a hard day at work and I go home and I'm saying I'm going to have a glass of wine, no one's going to bat an eye towards that. It's not going to take long for that to change, I don't think. I mean, to me, it is the natural progression, and there's enough people that use it already. Come July, whatever that magic date is, you're going to have another 4 or 5 million Canadians that are trying it out for the first time, or for the first time in however many years. It's not going to take long for it to disappear, for sure.
And it's cool. I had some of my family members walking around here. They're new to the whole idea, and they were kind of like, wow, it's an amazing the information that's coming out, just seeing other people, it's users of all walks of life, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. This is something and it's coming to Canada, and there's going to be a lot of people, like you said, trying out for the first time.
And I think what's really going to make the industry and how the industry is going to look in 5 years is going to be completely different, and it's going to be in ways that we're probably not even imagining right now. And again, the other small story I've got is my mom, who has never used this stuff. Of course, very proud of her son, and her son's getting into this industry, and she has debilitating arthritis, and she's found this cream that is a cannabis-infused topical cream, and it is the only thing that has worked for her. And she never would have discovered that if she hadn't just sort of gone to try it out. So now my lovely mom, who's now a grandmother as of 9 months ago, is going into these dispensaries in Vancouver Island to get this topical cream. I mean, it's outstanding that this is happening, and it's not that unusual. Her social circle, there are others that use it as well. And again, it was kind of all hidden, which is ridiculous, but it's going to come out pretty quickly.
And the cool thing is the natural approach. It is totally different than the pharmaceuticals.
Totally natural, of course.
You talk to some of the dispensaries, there's organic aspects, they're changing everything around, and it's going to be a whole new way of Canada, I believe.
It totally is. I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
And so Lift itself, where do you see, pot or cannabis, medical marijuana, whatever you want to call it, is going to be legal in Canada. Where do you see Lift going from here as it kind of grows?
So the natural progression, I mean, obviously we want to continue to grow in Canada, and there is just so much opportunity here in various different avenues. But I mean, for the industry as a whole, Canada's in this wonderful position where we really are one of the pioneers in the world in legalizing this, and for all the mistakes that we make and all the learnings that we have, I mean, the rest of the world is watching. So there's a whole raft of other countries right now that are not that far behind where we are. And naturally, I think a lot of the industry, very likely Lift included, is going to take the models that we have, the knowledge that we have, the learnings that we have, and probably apply it into those other countries.
Kind of
the future of the industry.
Kind of the pioneers here in Canada.
Totally the pioneers, yeah.
So Lift is also, it's across Canada. It's not just a Vancouver-based thing right now. Can you tell us about how it's traveled throughout the country?
Yeah, we have two major events. So Vancouver, the one that we're in right now, and then there's another one every year in Toronto in May. So the next one, again, will be in May, which, again, timing-wise is fantastic because it'll be about 2 months before the actual legalization of cannabis itself in this country. So the interest that we're seeing that's already been peaked here, that has really driven all the crowds and the excitement and the energy here, it is going to be that much more spinning, I guess, and up in Toronto. I mean, it's so that's our next step.
And Toronto is very similar in Canada, or in Vancouver. They're kind of pro, I would say. Toronto's a little more for it, and they have been for a while. It's a little more open there in some of the other provinces as well.
They are. Now, I mean, the openness in other provinces, and it varies. And again, the stats don't always bear it out. And most Canadians, the studies have shown, actually are very, very pro. So, I mean, the bigger cities tend to be a little more sympathetic towards it in general. And you're right, Toronto is very similar to Vancouver in that sense. But what we have seen is across the country, there's a general acceptance of cannabis, whether it be medical or recreational.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We are joined again by the COO, Craig Hudson, here at Lift Expo Vancouver 2018. Any closing remarks from you?
No, just please join us in May in Toronto, and this is going to be bigger and better, and it is going to be awesome, so please come on out.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nikita. Joining us right now is Dr. Shane Morris. Now, you are a gentleman with Hydropothecary. It's a licensed producer here in Canada based out of Quebec.
Correct.
Your history was involved in government for years and in terms of regulation and inspection. So my natural question is, how did you go from government into the private sector into cannabis?
Well, as you outlined, I was about 15 years in the federal government. I had started many, many years ago. I'm very old now at this point.
Yeah.
So I was doing Canadian Food Inspection Agency, so inspections, moved on to Agriculture Canada, and I moved into doing regulations and developing regulations. So it was an area that I have a natural interest in and that I've done a lot. So when the opportunity came to move into the cannabis space, which is brand new, the program at the time was the medical cannabis MMPR. So it was an opportunity for me to take what I've learned in a government perspective and apply it in literally a brand new program. And it was a real startup opportunity. So startup from a company perspective and a startup from a regulatory program perspective.
And a lot of people back home, they might not necessarily know how startup this industry initially was in the medical community. I mean, you had to work from the ground up to build this company into what will now become recreational.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We were truly a very, very small facility. We had a grow space of only 7,000 square foot. We had a very small packing facility and we had one vault. And so what we did is we 2015, that's when I joined and they had just started their first harvest. And we actually had to build in new systems. And part of that building the systems was ensuring the quality levels. We met the bare minimum standards to get a license, but that was only to grow. To get a sales license, you had to meet a whole new set of standards, whether it's testing, whether it's tracking and traceability and security. So we literally had to build this from nothing in this small facility. That allowed us then to grow a little bit more, and now we're had a 50,000 square foot. We're currently building 300,000 square foot that should come online, and we just announced 1 million square foot.
Wow.
So that will bring us to 1.3 million square foot of grow space.
A lot of output. Now let's talk about the regulation a little bit, because basically what took place, I did a story a while ago in California. Now it's a legalized state. However, prior to that, 90% of the cannabis coming out of it was testing positive for, pesticides and fungicides that shouldn't be necessarily on anything but an ornamental edible plant or an apple, for instance. How important is the regulation to ensure quality?
It's critical.
Yeah.
We've seen whether it's in areas that is not regulated, like other jurisdictions, when there are no regulations, that people use products that could be problematic or unassessed for risk for humans. We even saw it in the LP space as well, when there was no requirement for testing pesticide, it was voluntary. So I think it's critical going forward that we actually build confidence in cannabis, because it's already stigmatized, and you don't want another disaster. So you've seen recently with the romaine lettuce or beef
outbreaks, recalls.
That will only turn people away from what needs to be a well-supported new industry. So stigma. One type of stigma can't be replaced by another one, and we need to work on that.
So in the period of years, we've seen stigma dramatically decline, which is great. I mean, we've been educating people. To which degree is it a licensed producer's job to work with the public and educating the public and what they're using as a medicine?
I think it's very, very important. We at Hydropothecary have, for example, a 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year client care system.
Yeah.
So we don't just sell you the product, we help people. Very often we have people using cannabis for the first time. We have new products that, require opening and require use. Obviously, the primary healthcare professional that would have prescribed that product would be the first point of call, but we're there to help patients and understand how to use it, when to use it. Self-titration is something that's very important. Some people who move from dried product inhalation to oils, they're unclear about the need to go low, go slow. So there's that education period. And we also see ourselves having a role in recreational, where you may be able to go to an LCBO or a point of retail, but we'll always have our number on our product, and you can always call us.
Yeah.
And we intend to be 24/7, 365 days.
Well,
a year.
and this is something I wanted to get into because something that remains to this day to be a little bit rare within the LP space, the licensed producers, is that providing those lab analysis, those tests to ensure that the quality for the users there. You guys were one of the few to start that and to really brand into it. So how important is that quality assurance?
I think it's critical. It's not just good enough to have quality assurance.
Yeah.
You need to be transparent about it, because it is a question of trust. And how do you build trust? You open your books, you open your operations to scrutiny,
Right.
public scrutiny. So we were one of the first to start voluntary testing. We have also started putting in our own results. You can go online, and anyone, you don't have to be a patient. Some other companies, like, you have to be patient and you have to dig around their website. We're just one link away from knowing all the results, and even if you're not a client, you have full access to it. And it's very, very simple. Our client care folks work people through. The label has a lot number, and that lot number directly links to a result, and the results are very readable. We've actually worked with our labs to design a public-friendly result set, so pass, fail, explanations of what the tests were and why we did them. So it's everything from, we're testing for heavy metals, we're testing for bacteria, we're testing for fungal, we're testing for pesticides, we're testing for potency, which is a critical issue because we have a very specific methodology for potency. So unlike other areas where you might be able to get cannabis, with our cannabis, it's down to 0.0001% of exactly how much THC or CBD is in that. So you know yourself, there's no chance of overdosing or underdosing.
Now, we were talking about delivery system previous to coming to air, and one of those things is ensuring, we've all known a friend that, or somebody that is maybe, lack of a better term, overdosed or been a little bit uncomfortable with how much cannabis they've consumed. How difficult is it to ensure that you're getting the proper dosage?
Dosing's always a problem. So we've got a, if you look at the traditional way of inhalation of consuming cannabis, how much you're actually getting after you're burning it, how much, your different methodologies of inhalation. So it was always variable, and people essentially self-titrated, and they couldn't understand that. We understand that, edibles is where a lot of people want to go to. The new people to cannabis will want to go to. So we're working very hard to ensure that all our edibles, even our current sets of oils, are sprayable. We have a product line that's sprayable so that it's very convenient and very easy, and there's no real chance of getting too much, because there's small little sprays, and you're basically microdosing at that point. We're also working right now in advance of recreation and in advance of other types of edibles in understanding about getting consistency and potency across a product. So if you have a cookie, you want the left side to be equal to the right side. So if you only eat half of it, you're not getting twice as much. So there's a lot of science and a lot of innovation going into that to make sure that we get it right straight off the bat.
Now, quickly, last question to you. In terms of the LP model, we're looking at July as our regulatory date of legalization. What is to be expected for that? And are we on track? Is the LP model on track?
Yeah, so for LPs, the current sets of LPs, there's a lot of people scaling up, and I think in our own situation, we will be ready for recreational. The question will be, I think, mainly on the point of sales. Will the stores be ready? And the LPs don't have control over the stores, and so these are either provincially run stores or licenses to private companies that will have stores. So in Alberta and BC, there's going to be a model that way. So it's very hard to know whether they'll be ready and how many there will be in those situations. But from a scale-up perspective, we're certainly being ready. A little issue that we're still waiting, and we're trying to make sure that we push the government to obtain this, is what exact types of product we will be able to sell. So pre-roll, for example.
Right. How to market it.
Yeah, well, how much is a 1 gram only? Is it 2 gram? How many can we fit in a packet? Lots of regulatory issues that, you can't just automatically, appear overnight, because you have to have calibration of your equipment, you have to do runs, you have to do quality control on those, and it has to be perfect before it gets to the consumer.
And we're almost there. We're almost at 2018.
Almost.
We are at 2018. We're almost in July.
Yep.
Shane, I appreciate your time. Thank you, my friend.
Well, that's the end to day 2 here at the Lift Expo in Vancouver 2018.
Pretty exciting year.
It is a pretty exciting
And
year.
a pretty exciting show. I mean, the guests have been fascinating. This year is really, really going to be something in terms of obviously regulation come July, what we're seeing in the business community, and even, like you said, everyone is just happy.
It is. It's a very positive feeling here. Everyone's excited about the year to come, what it's going to do for Canada. It's totally going to change. The spirits are lifted and lit.
I know,
And,
right? No pun intended there at
Yeah,
all.
it's an awesome, awesome time for Canada and for all the people involved in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's fascinating. As we interview some of these people that are specializing in the cannabis industry, we learn so much from government affairs into growing, into gardening. I mean, really, it's a full-faceted affair here.
Totally. You can even cook all the things that
I know,
you're
right?
learning, right?
Yeah. Those big old meals that they were doing at the show.
Well, you can check us online at THC Live, and you can also check out your podcast for those of you who have missed out at the show today.
Yeah, we'll be airing them on the Green Scene podcast as well. So we're going to double whammy this one. Fascinating information, really easy to consume content. So make sure you listen and be educated, just like we were this week.
Awesome. Well, we will see you again. Thanks for watching THC Live.